everybody. Welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about our new sponsor, Taylor Style. If you've stuck with this podcast for any period of time, then you know I'm a same t-shirt every day kind of guy. Or at most, I'll sport a hoodie or something. I don't shop for myself. I don't think about outfits. It's just not my thing. But occasionally, I do have to show up professionally or sometimes socially. I want to actually look like I made some effort. And that's where Taylor, Taelor, has stepped in and been a total game changer for me. I'm a subscriber right now, and every few weeks I get a box with hand-picked outfits chosen by a real stylist, refined by their AI, and the crazy part is they actually nail it most of the time. Stuff I would never go buy, but I end up wearing nonstop just because it works. This hoodie, for example. This time of year, that makes Taylor the perfect gift. Whether it's a guy who wants to look sharp for holiday gatherings or just someone who hates shopping as much as I do, Taylor makes it absolutely effortless. No shopping, no laundry, no stress. Get 25% off your first month with code EGGS at taylor.style/membership. That's TAELOR.style/membership. And take your wardrobe to the next level today. Now, on to the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. Today's special guest is Jay Sapovits. He is the founder and CEO at Inked Stores. Jay, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Ryan, nice to chat. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Well, let's start, I guess, kind of at the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about your sort of entrepreneurial journey. You have in particular a interesting tale, or like a weaving tale, that gets you to where you are today. So it might be interesting to kind of talk about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think every entrepreneurial journey is a little curvy, but mine seems like it was more of a roller coaster than anything else. Not only curvy, but topsy-turvy and all of it. Look, you could go back as far as standing in a dry cleaner's across the street from where I went to college in Las Vegas, where I went to UNLV, to, where I'm sitting today. I mean, I literally could draw a straight line to it. So I've been in a little bit of everything. Started my career in the radio business, moved from there into the golf world, where I created a special event to the PGA Tour with Jim Furyk, and put my hat in the ring for professional golf and events and PR and marketing. And then was one of the originals at a group called Marquis Jet, so private jets, and left the private jet world to go into the luxury villa world, where I spent 2 years building a business on St. Bart's. And then left that world to create a fitness company, and eventually transition into what I'm doing now, which is a promotional and merchandise and marketing company. So, yeah, definitely not a straight line.
Well, I love that. I love to showcase these kind of meandering roads, because I think a lot of people are out there looking for like some kind of path, like a straight line to, hey, I see that guy on Instagram with the cool car. Like, I want to be like that guy. And so I think a lot of people are looking for like an easy answer, a short answer. But I think your experience and the experience of a lot of people who do this show is just that that's not the case.
For me, it was always a question of where are there gaps in the marketplace, and what is that next opportunity? Really, my first listen, nothing's on your own, right? You hear on my own. I'm going to say on my own, but I didn't do it on my own. But my first entrepreneurial experience was creating Jim Furyk's event, right, called the Exelon Invitational. And, look, I never get it done without a few people who believed in me and gave me that opportunity. But what I saw there and ran through was that in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I was a radio talk show host for 2 years on WIP, which is the top-ranked sports talk radio station, men talk, guy talk station. And this is way, way back, right? This is 25 years ago, before the genre even exploded, and television and cable and all that. Was that Philly was a first-class, first-rate sports town. They weren't going to support minor league products, and there was no PGA Tour event. So I came up with the theory that if you could put the best golfers in the world out on, in an event in Philadelphia, people would come and pay to see it. And so we created a skins game, because I figured it's easier to get 4 players than it is to get 40. And, we were right. Got very fortunate. The timing was just before the Brookline Ryder Cup in 99. Davis Love, who was set to be in the field, pulled out of the event 3 weeks before because he was struggling with some back issues and wanted to make sure that he was prepared for the Ryder Cup and not our event. We replaced him with a 19-year-old Sergio Garcia, who was coming off of a PGA championship where, remember the championship in Medina where he leaped when he ran behind the shot behind the tree. And, so we had gotten some good fortune there. But it's all from identifying an opportunity and believing that you're right and then driving it forward. And that's what happened there. And without that, I'm not sitting where I am today.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's interesting too, or a cool thing to point out that was like sort of a pivotal moment in your career that helped you lead into other things. You talked about identifying gaps in different areas. And I wonder if you couldn't talk a little bit about that, or like training the eye to be prepared for opportunities. Cause I think there's a lot of things that, so much stuff just floating around in the world that like even might smack some of us in the face as entrepreneurs. And a lot of times we're just not in the right spot to see it, or we're not tuned to be aware of that thing when that shows up. And so I wonder if you talk about just, since, obviously your career has been a long string of spotting gaps here and there over and over. Any insights that you can lend on, being aware or trying to pay attention to those kinds of things so that we can identify gaps in either our own business or in the environment around us?
I think it has to do with really identifying gaps in your life, first and foremost, right? So I don't think that you can go out and look for things that don't interest you or are, in some sort of a sub-market. To me, fix a problem that you have. Look for a problem or something going on in your world. For me, I was in talk radio. So I talked sports. I was in that professional sports environment, right? I worked at the time at a golf course. So I had tacit knowledge of the things that I was identifying, right? And I think that that's where it starts. It's like, what's a problem that you have, and do other people have that same problem? And to me, that's how you identify the gaps in the marketplace. I don't know if I could kind of sit back on the sidelines and look to things that I didn't either have direct experience with or firsthand knowledge with or had a real problem to and solve that problem. For me, it's always been about very personal. And I think that's the best way to go when you talk about looking for opportunities.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the other kind of angles or bits of that is, I guess, being open to these opportunities in the first place. So, it's one thing, and I think that this is where most people, maybe people who aren't as entrepreneurial kind of stop, which is they spot the problem, they get annoyed by the thing every day, they, encounter this problem at work or whatever it is that is their thing, but then they never act on it. They complain about it, they tell their friends, they do whatever, but they don't actually act on it. So, I think, first of all, being observant and recognizing these issues in your own life, being open to the fact that, there's a problem here that I could fix. And then I guess maybe third, taking action on that might be sort of the way to go. And that might be where you can talk a little bit about your expertise, which is, you weren't a guy that did PGA events, like, for example, and yet you were willing to just...
I'd never been to a professional golf tournament when I created one.
Yeah, but like the risk that it took, or the perceived risk, I think for your average person would be that it's, nuts. This idea that you're going to jump in and create an event having never done this before.
What's the risk? Failing?
Well, and what's funny is I see it the way you do, right? Which is, yeah, what really is the risk? Like, let's try for it. And what I love is, it's kind of trial by fire in the sense that, like, you didn't just go for like the regional tournament. You didn't try and run something at your neighborhood country club. Instead you went for kind of a PGA level event, and I'll have you extrapolate on this idea. But yeah, in your mind, and I agree with you, how bad could it be? Failure is really all that's going to happen.
So I had a commitment from a sponsor, right? I had run a golf tournament for Pico Energy, and I had asked them if I'm able to find a commitment from one of the top PGA Tour players in the world, would you be interested in sponsoring this event? And they gave me that commitment and said, yeah, we'd be very interested in it. So then my only job became getting the PGA Tour player to say that they would be interested in hosting an event. So then I went to all the logical choices. Jim happened to be from Pennsylvania. He was born 20 minutes from where the golf course was. He was just starting his career. He was a top 15, 20 player at the time, and a young guy who wanted to give back to charity as well. And let's not revise history. Took the call. His agent took the call and listened. And I went and sold a story. And so I don't know what I risked. Like, I risked a bad meeting. I've had plenty of bad meetings in my career. So I look at entrepreneurship as like, again, to me, I have always felt like doing nothing is actually a bigger risk than taking action and failing, because I just couldn't live with myself if I didn't take action. I think that it comes down to who you are as a person, and what you're talking about, Ryan, is a different problem than identifying opportunities. You're talking about walking through the door, and I guess the only way you get comfortable with walking through the door is to walk through a lot of them. And I had done that in my career, and I'd been exposed very early out in Las Vegas to super influential people, and I was exposed to them by working at a dry cleaners that happened to be the dry cleaners to the stars, Liberace and JJ, Dynamite Walker. And these were people, Robert Goulet. I mean, these were people who came into the dry cleaners, and I realized, these are people who put their pants on one leg at a time. I didn't grow up with celebrity, but I did grow up with a pop that was able to talk to anybody and everybody, and did. So definitely, have that characteristic like my dad. And then just realized that celebrities and stars are just like us and normal people, mostly, and had no fear to speak with anyone about anything. And to me, that's kind of how it all started. So you can't fix inactivity. The only way to fix it is by taking action, and nothing is going to happen from your couch.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's a really healthy perspective too, because to your point, it's not failure if you didn't move, like if you didn't do anything. You didn't even give yourself an opportunity to fail. And so I think it's really important that people get moving. And one of the things that you said in there that I really liked, in terms of how you framed the conversation around the golf tournament, was you said, if I ... So if I land PGA player, will you ... And what I think is really cool about that framework in particular is that I think for a lot of people, this might be a way to hedge doing something maybe you're a little nervous about. You were, I guess, and I don't want to, stay where you were in sort of the realm of your personal success at that time. But it seems like you were kind of punching up, that this was something that was a little above what you would be doing, or it might be above your level. And so, but, you weren't afraid to do it. You weren't afraid to take the step, but you were able to hedge with something like this, which is, hey, if I can actually pull this off, will you back me? And I think that might be a really smart strategy for people.
Ryan, especially when you're punching up, like, that you really have nothing to lose. Like, I got rejected by 24 PGA Tour agents. So what? Like, you'd expect I would get rejected by them. I only needed one to say yes to me. Yeah. So again, like, I'm punching up, but yeah, sure. So what? That's punching up is, or, fighting above your weight class, as I've heard. There's no downside. There's zero downside. The downside is you have as much as you had before, which is nothing. And so what? So that to me was the easy. That to me was very easy. I guess I just don't even look at it as risk. It's easy to look back now and see how it could be perceived that way. But I just was, when you're in it, you're just in it. And I've always had this penchant to just put myself in the middle of these environments that allowed me to breed success. I mean, my story is unique. I mean, I don't talk to a lot of people who have it. 19 years old, I'm the radio producer engineer for the UNLV basketball team, which was the 89, 90, 90, 91 teams with Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon. And I'm traveling with the team and staying in the same hotel and working with Ross Porter, who was the LA Dodgers announcer alongside of Vin Scully. And I'm at practices with the UNLV basketball team, and there's Dick Vitale and Sonny Vaccaro and all the Billy Packer and all the big time announcers of the time, and other celebrities were coming in to see the team because they were such celebrities. So I just got exposed to it very early by going out to Las Vegas, and I kind of just never got intimidated by it as I continued along my career. And I've always, I'll be even sitting with my kids now, and they're older, 25, 23, and 19, and I'll drop names to them of people that I've had dinner with, or clients of former clients of mine in the jet or villa rental world. And just felt like normal life for me, but I've always kind of been around the action.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting. So in your case, I mean, obviously you had exposure to celebrity and things like that through Las Vegas, but if you're not in the realm where celebrity is who you're targeting, maybe you're equally as intimidated by, high powered CEO or business leader or whoever it is that you're trying to reach. So, but what I love is this story of sort of, I don't know, like sharpening yourself over time, this fail forward, fail often kind of approach that I think a lot of people have read about, but maybe not acted on. But I think the real key there is you could have done, I was talking earlier, I mean, you could have had a golf event at your local country club and raised some money for charity. And you could have just done something with a local club pro or whatever. It didn't have to be a PGA thing. And, but I think for some people, that version might be what they do, which is, really the upside's not that high. It's fine. You can do this thing, but you can punch higher and the risk is no different. The amount of work you had to put in or the amount of energy you had to do was the same, whether you had PGA guy or not, but you decided to go the more professional or the more PGA route, versus doing something local. And I think if we're trying to find a moral or something actionable there, this idea of making sure that the risks you take actually do allow you to fail forward, and I'm glad you added the little bit of detail that, this wasn't your first phone call. You called a bunch of PGA guys and there were several rejections prior to that. And I think that, for some people, they might've just heard that version of the story where it's, oh yeah, he just called this PGA pro. And then there's this thing. And I think life doesn't really work that way, so I think it's good to point out those little steps along the way where, because of multiple failures, it ultimately ended up in a better event. You got a guy who was actually interested, who really wanted to participate. You were able to build something on the back of that where, I don't know, if your first guy had picked up the phone, maybe it wouldn't have gone so well.
Ryan, the first meeting I had with Furik's representation was in the Metro Media building, which was basically at the Meadowlands in New York, and outside of New York City at one of the office buildings right there. And my wife is we lived in Philadelphia at the time. My wife is from outside of Boston. So I scheduled the meeting, and she decided that we were going to take a trip that weekend to the Cape to visit, spend time with her family. And we loaded at the time, 2 cats. Can I tell you? We loaded our 2 cats into the car, and she sat. And I mean, just mind you, this is 1998. She sat in the car, no cell phones. She sat in the car while I went up and took the meeting for 2 hours and 20 minutes in person, and came back down, got in the car, drove up Cape Cod for the weekend. And, I tell that story because it's crazy to think that my wife at the time sat in the car while I had a 2-hour plus meeting. I told her before I went up, I said, one of 3 things are either going to happen. I'm either going to come down in 15 minutes, I'm going to come down in 2 hours, or I'm never going to come down again. And he ended up coming down in 2+ hours. But that's all part of that. That's all part of that story is like, we really hit it off. We ideated on the spot. And those are people that are still in my life today.
Yeah. Well, and I might characterize that, just to kind of tug on this thread of opportunity or spotting gaps again, which is that, I mean, you called other agents, but the agent who actually picked up the phone, or the one that made for the best meeting, was the one that finally answered the phone, right? Or finally did take the meeting. And I think that if you had shut yourself off or said, well, I called a PGA guy and it didn't work out, and walked away, you might not have even found the opportunity, right? But there it was, it finally revealed itself because you were willing to keep trying. And I think that for a lot of people, that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, but go one step further, Ryan. Like, I didn't let the fact that it was an inconvenient time or inconvenient location for me, or I was going to inconvenience my wife, dictate my circumstances of taking that meeting either. I mean, think about it. You tell you make your significant other sit in the car for 2 hours, and you're not like, you're in the meeting, like, hey, I'll be down when I'm down. Like, that's the way it's going to be. Like, that's both a supportive spouse, but it's also understanding like the opportunity may not be there on Tuesday of next week. So if you have the opportunity to take it on Friday of this week, you do it on Friday of this week and not Tuesday of next week. And you inconvenience the people who are okay to be inconvenienced and not the ones that are giving you the opportunity. So you have to show up full force when the opportunity is given to you. And there's no guarantee that it's not, going to come around the corner just because it's better for your schedule.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, because I think that is a big part of the other half of the identifying opportunities coin, which is acting on it when it comes and being willing to take those steps. Because for a lot of people, maybe they'd have got the phone calls, or maybe they wouldn't have even gotten to the third or fourth or fifth call, and then just walked away from it, and the opportunity would have been missed. Yet it was just one phone call away, like just one more call, man, and you'd had it. So I think it's really important to be willing to show up and be willing to give of yourself. And I think that notion of sort of, in this case, giving of your personal time, your recreational time, your family's time, all those things, you were willing to sacrifice those things to make this meeting happen. And I mean, I don't know if it's good vibes or positive energy or what it was, but I mean, it has to contribute to the opportunity here.
Yeah. What we're talking about is, at a micro level, I understand. At a macro level, it's really it's really difficult to be an entrepreneur these days in some sense. That back when I was doing there's so much information now that we didn't have back when I was just starting out in my career. Like in my career, like it was Dale Carnegie's book was a thing. Now Dale Carnegie's book can be summed up in AI, and you could essentially read the Cliff's Notes to it in 15 minutes and know everything you need to know about, how to win friends and influence people, right? So there's so much information that's out there, Ryan. It's so hard to sift through, and it can be so incredibly intimidating, right? Because, you go on X and this guy's doing $180,000 MRR at 19 years old, and screw you, you're never going to be him. And it's easier to fold than it is to try to do your own thing because you might only do 1,000. Let me tell you something. If you're an entrepreneur and you can get one person to pay you for something, chances are you can get two, you can get three, you can get four. And sometimes it's not all about hard work. Sometimes you don't have the right idea and you do need to change and you do need to pivot, and you can be embarrassed if you fail. And the social media aspect of entrepreneurship, of dating, of
name your facet. Yeah.
Name it, has put so much in pressure, right? Back when I was doing it, I mean, yeah, I could have failed, but it wasn't going to be public. Now everything feels like it's going to be public, and you just got to not care. You just have to be confident in yourself. Not to say that you run with supreme confidence at all times. Who does? No one does, right? People doubt themselves. Imposter syndrome is real. I have it to this day, a multi-million-dollar business. you just have to know that you've given it your all and you've given it an honest effort. And damn, who cares what other people, what other people say, be damn, like it doesn't matter. Like what's out there in the world about you is none of your business. The only thing that is of your business is, did I give my best today or didn't I? And when I say, did I give my best today, it doesn't mean you were your best today. It means you gave your best today. And that's very, very clearly different. So what I mean by it is simple, is every day you show up is not going to be the best day of your life. You are going to feel different. You're going to speak differently. Things are going to come out of your mouth one way one day and one way the other day, just based on either how you slept or circumstances of the day. But did you try your hardest, right? We all know if we're giving maximum effort, not even maximum effort, a lot of effort. You can't lie to yourself about that. If you just stay true to yourself and give the best effort that you have every day, well, then you'll know soon enough as to whether or not the idea is the right idea and you are able to see it to fruition. You can't get caught up in what other people do and comparison and, their life versus your life. You just got to really put the blinkers on. And in 2025, putting the blinkers on is probably the hardest thing that entrepreneurs have to do. I never had to do that.
Yeah.
I
think it's a great point. And it's something we've talked about quite a bit on the show, which is, the whole comparison being the thief of joy kind of deal, right? Where you're sitting and you're watching all these people on social media and, it looks like a 20-something standing in front of his yacht and his Lamborghini that neither belong to him. And he's standing out front of the shopping center or whatever, and it's like, the one thing that we often caution with social media in particular is that it sometimes feels like, especially if you're just playing for social media, like you're trying to put, posture and look away or, try to, create this image of yourself or whatever, that you're actually burning a lot of time and it feels like you're doing something, but you're actually doing almost nothing. Like you may as well just stay at home and watch TV because you're just posturing, you're doing this stuff, but whatever you're actually putting out there isn't moving the needle at all. And so there's a lot of things like this in life right now, I think, just with technology and, the different, social media platforms, AI tools, things like this, where you could spend all day doing something, but that something actually doesn't really amount to much.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And yes, as it relates back to the standing in front of a yacht that's not theirs, maybe it is. Who cares? Again, it doesn't matter. Like, you're here to change your world, and what they're doing doesn't matter. The challenge is, who do you follow and who don't you follow? And I don't mean follow in the sense of social media. I mean words, advice, input. And again, we just didn't have that when I was younger. And a lot of ways, life was a lot more simple.
I totally agree. It's a weird time for sure. So sort of to transition, let's talk a little bit about sort of the pivot. So as you mentioned, your path is very meandery and you kind of jump from thing to thing. You didn't go on after doing this PGA event to make a long career as a PGA consultant or whatever, and you decided to move on to other things. So can you talk about that? I mean, obviously that lends into the, looking for gaps and identifying opportunities kind of thread. But can we talk a little bit about your transition from doing, I guess, let's call it live events into doing more like marketing type work?
Yeah, well, I mean, I went from the Exelon Invitational, right, to become one of the originals at a company called Marquis Jet. We were partners with NetJets. We resold and repurposed their time in private jets into 25-hour lease blocks, which was a first ever of its type of business. And I don't know if that was, look, I was hooked up there with, now my current partner, Ken Dichter. And I don't know if that was, I didn't know that was the entrepreneurial opportunity when I took it that it became. I mean, we went from a zero to $1 billion in 4.5 years. And I can't tell you that I absolutely saw that coming. What I know is we were living in Philadelphia at the time, or outside of the city. My wife was from New England. She wanted to get back up to New England. I had just sold my interest in the golf event, and I was looking for a new opportunity. And this was a new opportunity with an entrepreneurial group that had an idea that I thought was really cool. And they were willing to get me up to live in New England. And that's how that started. So it wasn't like, hey, Jay, you're on the founding team and, we're going to do this great thing. And here's what the business plan. I mean, I came after the business plan, and it was really like, hey, we need sales killers out there to go out there and chase this big opportunity. And that's where I slotted in. Was I ended up working out of the Boston office with the chairman of the company. It was just he and I to start. And yeah, I mean, I was direct sales. That's what it was. And there's no better spot to be in as an entrepreneur than in a sales role for an entrepreneurial, high growth startup. And that's what that became.
Yeah. No, I love it too. And it's interesting, just like looking at the arc of your story, it's like, early exposure to celebrity and fast-paced, movement, action, radio, moving around the country, traveling, broadcast, all these things, the high energy things that came out of Vegas, moving into these golf tournaments and promotion of those kinds of activities where you're working with PGA talent, things like that. Then you move into the airline business here, where you're selling basically private jets to, I guess, high net worth individuals and people like that, celebrities, those kinds of people. And then into, later villas and things like that for sort of that same audience. It's interesting that your career, you've almost been sort of tailored or sort of hammered out to work with those kinds of people, because I think that there is like a class of folks that, whether it's true or not, I mean, obviously they do put on their pants the same way as everybody else, but I think there's this air about those kinds of people that, some people might not thrive in that sales environment the same way you had. By the time you got to, jet sales and villa sales, like you already knew how to talk to those people. You'd already spoken to agents. You've already, you understood the game a little bit. And so I think that, back to our earlier conversation about, trying to, I guess, be willing to fail and be willing to do that stuff. I mean, maybe you got kind of exposed quickly by virtue of Vegas and everything else, but it seems that you've obviously honed this over time. I mean, if you're able to help, participate in growing a company to $1 billion in 4 years, that's pretty serious growth.
So early in my life, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. Bill Berge, I went to school with he was a very famous Eagles player. I went to school with his son, Jason. So we were friendly, and I was always over the Berge's house. And Bill was a celebrity and a star, and I just saw him as Mr. Berge. So I think that definitely was ingrained in me, that a lot of people don't know a professional athlete. I knew one at the level of like, do you want a sandwich, Jay? So I think that probably subconsciously helped me. I also had a father. My dad, Mike, was a likable, affable guy who I went everywhere with and who talked to everybody. I mean, it was nothing for my dad to stand around and talk to, he would talk to the guy emptying the trash. He would talk to the guy in the suit, the executive in the suit. So, I just have always had that ability to kind of not judge people and talk to everybody and be friends with everyone. And, I mean, I got that from my pop, and it served me well in my career, because as it turns out, a lot of decision makers are watching when you don't think they're watching. And, when you treat people with dignity and class and respect, no matter where you think they are on the class spectrum, it's just I'm very fortunate to have that character has been instilled in me through my upbringing. And, I saw it live.
Well, it's such an important characteristic, and I think it's, I think there's a couple like little morals we can lean on here, which is one, the notion of giving more than you receive, or the notion, and we're taping this, a couple weeks before Christmas, so maybe that's a good theme. But this notion of giving more than you receive, or we had recently on the podcast this guy Bob Berg that's known for the Go Giver movement, and the Go Giver movement is kind of that idea, right? You give of yourself, and then you'll receive something back. And I think one of the things that you do, or that has become apparent just in this conversation so far, is that you're really great at connecting people. And whether that's in a sales environment, or that's in, an entrepreneurial sense, or when it's you're making the phone call to the golf pro and trying to put an event like this together, you're connecting with people. But I think what is showing through, or at least what I'm seeing in the theme of this conversation, is that there's a selflessness in what you're doing. A lot of times people will sort of corner a salesperson as being, driven by a financial incentive or whatever. But just in hearing you speak and the types of things that you're doing, it sounds more to me like you're connecting for connecting's sake. And then it happens to work out that, there's a business objective or something underlying. Now, that doesn't mean that you didn't reach out to golf pros with the objective of trying to start an event. But, but at the same time, you were putting these different pieces and parts together, for a good cause. And, and then even as you move into jet sales or whatever, I mean, ultimately you're trying to solve a problem for somebody. And by virtue of being a good connector and a good communicator, you were able to bridge the gap between your prospective customers and the airline company or the villa company or whomever, or all the way now into what you're doing today.
I think that as I've gotten older, that's definitely become more true than when I was younger. I think when I was younger, I was a little more transactional minded. And one of the regrets I do have in my career is that I wish I could go back and be less transactional relative to the relationships that I had with people, because I would have held on to those relationships a lot longer than I ended up holding on to them. Live and learn. As I've gotten older, and I lived a fast lifestyle. So I always thought, well, I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. And it definitely catches up to you. And now at my age, which sounds crazy to say, but I'm 54. It's not young, right? I'm definitely on the second half of my career. I look back and I realize life is long, and you don't have to squeeze every ounce of value out of every transaction. It's great to be able to leave stuff on the table for other people, and it's great to be involved in transactions where you're not involved. So to your point, right, connecting people for the sake of connecting. Like, I want to see the people who are around me do well, and I don't need to touch every piece of it. So, yeah, I think that's a lesson learned in time. It's harder when when you're younger, you have a lot more pressure. I mean, you have a family, kids, houses, car payments. You've got future big payments for college ahead of you. It's hard to duck out of it and not be involved in every way and not think of me. But when you get older and realize you've accumulated some, and you don't have to have those same concerns. I mean, so time has alleviated some of the pressures that you have when you're younger. I have those conversations now with my own kids, and I tell them, like, if you're going to do something, you'll never have less bills than you have now. And it might seem like you have a lot of expenses now, but $5,000-$6,000 a month? Like, oh my gosh. When I was in my heyday, like what I would have given to only have $5,000 or $6,000 in expenses. So I'm not, and depending on where you live, those numbers could be cut in half. So I'm all for, like, try to get that perspective in your career. Like, where am I at in my career, and how much does taking action cost me today? Because it might cost you 2, 3, 4x in the future. And you might be landlocked, married, kids, not able to take those same risks. I took the biggest risk of my life when I had 3 kids and a 6-month-old. And I look back at it with regret. Like, I wish that I hadn't made that jump when I made it. It cost me years out of my life, because it was my only loss. And, I had a career that went up like this and down like that. And then it's been a steady build up, right? And that, like, that right in the middle point was super painful, and ill-timed and probably avoidable.
Yeah, no, it's funny because the perspective that you just shared, this idea, when you were younger, you were much more transactional, and then growing out of that a little bit. It's one of the things that we've really encountered on this podcast. I mean, in 450 plus ish interviews with CEOs and startup founders, everybody comes to the table as sort of this overnight success, right? They've all arrived at where they've arrived at, and everybody's like, oh, look at all, look at what they've got and all the money they've made and all these things, back to our social media conversation. And then, but the reality is that there's like this 10 or in some cases 20-year overnight success in reality, which is everybody has these stories with wins and losses and good choices and bad choices. And it does seem to me that, us old folks are pitching the, you can be more friendly, you could be more, connecting for the sake of connecting and stuff like that. So we tell the younger people, I know I do the same with my kids. And, but I know that when I was younger, I wasn't in a position to do those things. And I think that might just be kind of nature. Like that's just kind of part of the deal. And, but I think if you can arrive at it, even if it does come later in life, I think that it's still sort of something in your nature that was there all along.
Probably.
And the relationships that do survive it are indicators that was the case. So I wondered if
I have a lot of relationships that do. But listen, Ryan, I mean, the other thing I'd like to share, how many LeBrons are there?
Yeah, not a lot.
People get stuck comparing themselves all the time. And I know, the expression you share, which is comparison is the thief of joy. Like, there's just not that many LeBrons. Like, there's not like Steve Jobs. Like, I used to well, look at Jeff Bezos. Well, yeah, okay. Stop. You're not Steve Jobs. I'm not Jeff Bezos. Like, those guys are freaks, right? LeBron is a freak. Bezos is a freak. Cuban, same thing, right? You could argue got lucky, but so what? Good timing, great, good for him. So you're not that guy. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I'm not that guy, right? I'm just a guy who grinds every day and has amassed a good business because of it. And that's 1% of all businesses that are launched in the United States will ever reach seven figures. 1%. I mean, drive down Main Street. And if you're like me, which I'm guessing you are, you do the math on businesses that you see open up in your town, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went shopping last weekend and I was talking to the shop owner, and, she shared with me that she's had days where there's zero sales. And in my head, I'm like, all of a sudden now, okay, she's open 240 days out of the year. And I'm like doing the math. Like, here are her average sales and thinking about what her top line is. And I don't know how she gets to $1 million. And that's not to say that it's not a good business. It's just to say that, like, we so fantasize about the billions and billions and billions that we fail to realize that, like, if you built $1 million business, right? If you're able to get $70,000, I think, so is it $80,000? I should know that. If you're able to get $82,500 a month in revenue, $82,500 a month in revenue, right? A couple $1,000 a day, $2,600, $2,750 a day in revenue. Okay. You've built a 1% business.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. I mean, because I don't think a lot of people think of it that way. And to your point, or like sort of, I guess, on the other side of that point, so much about success is viewed through the eyes of other people, right? We're busy looking at LeBron, we're looking at the movie stars, we're going whatever. So our bar of success is like, okay, well, I want to be Brad Pitt. Well, I'm not going to be Brad Pitt. It's not going to work out for me. Unfortunately, it's too late, I think. No skincare plan is going to turn me around and make me into Brad Pitt. But I think if we stop and we look at things, and you might be a good example to speak to this, just because of the type of work that you've done over the course of your career, your ability to pivot, your ability to find these opportunities. Lifestyle is such a big thing. And so, just using the shopkeep that you were just talking about, the store that you're looking at and going, man, how do they ever make this $1 million business? Well, maybe they don't need to, right? Maybe it builds the lifestyle they want, whether that's the house they want, the ability to travel when they want, maybe it's somebody who wants to work remote so they can travel around the world and, live on hardly anything, but they get to live that life because they're in business, even if business is $5,000 a month. And so it's like, I think that we get caught up in these metrics around, what should success look like? Oh, well, you need millions of dollars. You got to have a big house. You got to do all these things. And I think if we understand, or if we can kind of back off that pressure on ourselves and on others, I don't know, do you need $1 million to live the life that you want? Like, could you live on less and see your family and travel and see the things that are important to you, or make them, cook in your kitchen that has all the cool stuff that you love because you love to cook, or like, can you build the life you want even without a business that's enormous and still call yourself successful? I think there's a lot of room, and it seems like maybe in your life too, and you can talk to this, I don't want to put on too much projection here, but it seems like you may be kind of crafting your own lifestyle a little bit here. You were really interested in sports, and you were chasing things out in Vegas, and you're running this fast lifestyle like you were saying, and you're traveling with the teams, and then you're interacting with sports, and you're building PGA events. You're just doing all these things that are like, it's not the obvious path if what you're looking for is like a safe job where you make money. You go work at the factory that dad worked at or whatever. Like, I mean, there's a safer way to make a living than to jump around to all these seemingly disparate things in your life. Although I think we've kind of tapped into the through line there. But I think that, life or everybody's entrepreneurial journey, I guess, to sum up, can be whatever you want it to be, as long as it satisfies you personally, whatever it is. And I think we need to try and lay off one another in terms of this whole, everybody has to make so much money or has to have so many things or whatever to sort of qualify as being successful.
Yeah. I mean, I did things that were fun and interesting to me. That's what my career has been characterized by. I mean, radio, professional golf, private jets, luxury villas, fitness, and now merch. I mean, what's not to love? I love merch. I love swag and gifts and apparel and decoration and cool stuff to wear, and being able to put anything I want on anything I choose. I mean, I've had a great career relative to being in really fun industries and businesses. I mean, somebody else might have the same level of excitement around a SaaS product. I don't. So bad news if I'm trying to get into a SaaS product, because it's just not going to have the same level of appeal to me, right? So you have to do something that you find interesting or solves a problem that you've had, or appeals to you in a way that keeps you motivated to continue to do it. And yeah, I'm very fortunate that I have.
Well, maybe that's a good opportunity for us to sort of pivot into inked stores, and what caused you to make that pivot, in the first place, move out of your last line of work and into this line. And, what role did it fill, I guess, in your life in terms of, again, this being one of those industries that you're excited about? And, what was that, I guess, shift from one thing to another like?
Yeah, I mean, the shift really for me was about not having enough sales in the previous iteration of Inked, which was in the fitness space, and not having the sales velocity that would allow us to scale and grow the way we wanted to grow. So really, Inked was almost a necessity to go from selling products that don't get bought in volume to products that do get bought in volume, like t-shirts and hats and sweatshirts and other wearable type goods. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes you act out of, I mean, not sometimes, most of the time you're acting out of self-preservation to start, and then opportunity to end. And Inked was a pivot from a fitness company to survive. And, it was a lesson learned from a previous business, right? Which was the only thing you can't do in a business is run out of money. And that's where you have that's the game over, the end. And we were able to create revenues before that happened.
Well, it's such an interesting transition from, sort of the fitness industry into branded products. And I mean, we've met with other companies that have done similar things, or even just over the course of my career, I've talked to different vendors. But one of the things I like about your approach in particular, and you can talk about it a little bit, is I think that it's kind of elevated branded products, or these sort of things that you think of in terms of like slapping a logo on something, to a different level. Like you're working with big brands, you're working with technologies that are cool, you're using all these kinds of different things, and it's really elevating. There's a long time. I mean, like I remember a few years ago trying to buy some like trade show merchandise and stuff like that for a client, and the stuff that we could find are kind of the usual. It's like a silly pen, or it's like kind of a, I don't know, a pad of paper or something that's kind of cool, I guess. And it's like, it's not very exciting stuff. And I think, especially during COVID, I think we started to see this, but you were having all these companies doing these like kind of virtual welcome kits, or these swag bags, or, even I guess now, new hire kits are coming with laptops and iPads and, all kinds of cool stuff. And, but it seems like there's been a real shift in the type of material, or the types of things that can be created as promotional good. And I don't know if that's something that you're seeing in the industry too, but it just, as an outsider, it seems like things have really shifted to where the products you're creating are much more competitive with something you'd grab off a retail shelf these days.
Yeah. And I think that that's probably a function of the way that items can be decorated now, because of the technological advancements have advanced significantly. I mean, with digital and direct and laser and all forms of technology that have allowed us to be able to get a logo on so many different things in so many different ways. Look, I love the business because it allows me creativity. Our best clients are the ones that want ideation, and not just to buy the normal, trinkets and trash, as people like to refer to trade show materials as. That's not our world. Our world is folks that believe their giveaways or things with their logo on it can be impactful and create a outcome that they're looking to try to create, Ryan. So yeah, it appeals to me on a personal level, because that I've always been super creative and enjoy problem solving, and we try to do that on behalf of our clients.
Yeah, I like that. Well, and I think that's for me anyway, that's a nice stance to take on these kinds of products. Cause I think, and you've probably encountered these guys even in your own career, going to these companies, and they've got kind of a slate of things that this is what they do. And they just kind of, they can embroider a logo on a shirt, or they can, screen print something, but there's not a big, push for ideation, or a big push to do something creative. It's really just kind of, well, here's, a few things that we do. And I found, at least in the past, in interacting with these types of companies, that they've been a little bit low energy that way, just in that they're not excited about my brand. They're not, they don't care about any of that stuff. It's just, hey, we're just producing stuff with your logo on it. Like, it's kind of, I guess, to use an earlier term that we've been talking about, is more transactional. Yeah. It's like, I just want to make this thing. I'm not actually invested in your brand.
Yeah. Well, and look, in fairness, I mean, and I don't know the order sizes that you've had relative to these companies, but I mean, you do need to have some level of scale to get a company's creative services versus not, right? You can't order $300 worth. I'm not saying that's you. I'm saying you can't expect at a very small company to get a high. So this industry is pretty wired, right? If you have a budget, you have a lot more options than if you don't have budget, right? So I think where sometimes, but there, having said that, there's always ways to do things creatively. But a lot of times it does come down to you do have to have some scale and have some budget behind you in order to be able to do things that are a little more special or unique than other companies.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I think most people listening would understand that, obviously you can't go in with a, $100 order and expect that, the Rolls Royce treatment. But at the same time, even with some of the bigger orders and things that we've looked at over the years, I found that even a lot of times, like, the quality that we would get back isn't good. Now, I will say, admittedly, technology has moved quite a bit. I haven't yet used a company like this personally for a client in maybe 4 or 5 years. So certainly technology has moved. To your point, printing techniques have evolved. The technologies around these different things have really moved. And I have some experience with like on-demand printing and things like that for, personal brands and things like that are, I guess, kind of akin to this stuff. And the level at which you can do things today is just like mind blowing. I ran a clothing company when I was pretty young, and we had to do everything the old fashioned way, where you bought screens and you had to, keep your own inventory and all this stuff. And now we can basically run the same business on demand, get the same kind of output, and it's every bit as good. So, I mean, technology has moved in some pretty exciting ways. Hey, we're getting kind of to the end of the hour here. I wonder if you just wanted to take a quick minute and maybe let people know where they can interact with you personally, if they'd like to talk to you or learn more from you, or learn more about your journey. Also, where they can get involved with Inked and learn more about the work you guys do over there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, inkstores.com, INKDSTORES.com, no E, is where, my company resides. And then as far as I'm concerned, it's JAY, J at inkstores.com. And I post every day on LinkedIn my own thoughts, have since the beginning of the year. Don't use AI. And anything that's written on LinkedIn has come directly from my mind to my fingertips, to the keyboards, to LinkedIn. And that's 7 days a week, Ryan, all year. And
that's pretty impressive.
And having all year.
That's crazy. Yeah, I started a newsletter at the first of the year, and I do one a week. And even that thing is like a struggle to try and get done. I can't imagine being so active on LinkedIn. That's awesome. Yeah. I also, I don't know if it's a good commentary or bad commentary on our society, that it's actually an upsell to tell people that you made the content yourself. So, so I love that you did that, because man, there's so much noise out there, and I think it's only going to get worse. And, so
that's why I do it. But that's why I do it. Right? I mean, like, I've used AI. I mean, it's not like I'm not in touch with AI, but, I think that the way that I write, I have a unique perspective on the world, or at least I think I do. And I have a presence on LinkedIn because I want people to and I do these podcasts because I want people to be able to get to know me. And I think that it's a differentiator between myself and other companies out there, is me, and how much I care and believe in what we do and try, which isn't to say we're perfect, but it's to say we care and try. And so I don't think you can say you care and try and lead with authenticity and then not be.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And it's funny because one of the things that we've talked about, and we don't have to go into it now, but one of the things that we've talked about with regularity is that those who will survive sort of the AI revolution, at least as it happens in business, and I work in marketing and design. And so for people like us, is the people with perspective, I think, will be the people who end up coming out on top. And that'll be, like even today, I mean, you might be able to get AI to generate a Picasso, but if you're somebody who actually cares about Picasso, you want a Picasso. You don't want the fake Picasso that AI makes. And I think that pertains to humans too. I think, if you're a human being and you have a unique perspective, I mean, AI might be able to take your perspective and layer that on top of something else. But it's not going to derive what's coming right out of your head. And so I think it's really important that we keep sharing those things and those perspectives, because I think that the human part of what makes us human will be the thing that outlives the AI part.
Being a genuine human being is undefeated in the history of time.
Oh, I love that. That's a great way of saying it, is undefeated. I love that. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much, Jay. I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me this afternoon. I learned a lot about you. I mean, what an exciting career. So thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate you, man.
Ryan, thank you.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes in the podcast this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.